There is safety in thinking in a diner. You can have your coffee or your milkshake, and you can go off into strange, dark areas and always come back to the safety of a diner. That's David Lynch.
I was gonna say, that sounded like very poetic and about something very mundane.
Today, on It Belongs in a Museum, we're going to continue a journey that began several episodes ago with the Batman episode, where we learned about George Barris, who created the 66 Adam West Batmobile. Or we did an episode about the real sort of Batmobile he created, the Golden Sahara. And then from the Golden Sahara, we followed the Goodyear tires to the Goodyear rigid airships of the American Navy. From there, we went into World War II and Nazi theology and the Thule Society. And now, steak in the style of Hamburg, also known as the Hamburger, and the rise of the diner and fast food. I, of course, am Andy, joined again by Mark.
Hello.
And we have just consumed very large Whataburgers to get into the headspace of this.
Yes, and we may regret that later on.
Yeah,
See.
it's pretty heavy. Anyway, so the earliest knowledge about hamburgers, or what would eventually become hamburgers, goes back to, depending on who you ask, either the Romans or Genghis Khan.
I was not expecting us to start anywhere near there.
We'll start with Genghis Khan because I think his is the most interesting. The earliest records of ground meat eaten in mass date back to, again, those groups. This was Genghis Khan and the Mongols. They ate raw, shredded meat
That's not great.
while riding, and because they were constantly moving as nomads, it meant that the meat was usually a fresh kill, so bacteria hadn't had time to really form on a lot of meat they were eating, and the cold environments kept it from going bad.
Ah.
Weird, right?
So wait, they would just have handfuls of ground beef.
So actually, they would often store this meat underneath their saddle, which would mince the meat with the friction of riding and also soften and warm it up for eating.
Huh.
Sounds disgusting, but also kind of impressive.
Kind of reminds me, there was like a thing in the 90s of like, oh, here's a grill, put it on the front of your car and uses the heat from your engine to cook like steaks and stuff.
I do think that was Genghis Khan who invented that too.
Well,
You're right.
It's just weird seeing history.
But this is in the 1220s.
Okay, so Joan of Arc hasn't even been born yet.
That is how you see. Most people, like in the old days, it was BCAC. Yours is BJAG. I regret immediately after BJ came out before
Yeah.
Joan.
Yeah.
I'm dropping this bit. But another possible connection goes back even further with the Romans, who would take ground meat and add seasoning and wine and herbs. But it was more of a pate type of tartare situation.
Yeah, cat food is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's. But yeah, the food though was so well revered, it outlived the Roman Empire.
Which is crazy to think about.
It is. It actually then led into medieval societies.
Ah.
And even in the Middle East, where you would have kebabs, because now you're seeing the implementation of vegetables added into the meal.
Yeah, because like kebab is like minced meat. Like it's not ground, but it's like...
And it is skewered, which is different than a burger. But it
Yeah.
does mean that it's a mobile food.
Oh, fast food. This is what you're talking about.
And in the medieval societies, they would ground meat, including beef, pork, chicken, horse. Again, we don't... Our show talks a lot about horse abuse.
Yeah, that's weird. Horses historically have had a bad run of things, which is something we're learning.
And fish into patties and even little meatballs, which is sort of... You also have your kebabs and such.
I wonder, presumably this is where Italy kind of got the idea for the ground meatball.
The medieval culinary work started adding vegetables for flavor and to extend their meat supplies. And also, this is around the time you have like kebabs and stuff from the Middle East. So you've got this mesh of different types of cooking meats that are all starting to spring out now.
And they're mixing vegetables in there?
Yeah.
As like a...
Have you seen a kebab? It's got meat
Yeah,
and veggies.
but like just the idea of like, it's so crazy, because obviously we know what the end product is, and we're seeing elements sort of like, it's kind of like looking at a caveman knowing it will become a human.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see that.
In fact, a tomato-based paste started being used for flavor with sausage in Hamburg after this, which would become...
ketchup.
It wasn't even called ketchup at the time. It was called catsup.
Oh, right. I remember hearing people call it catsup, and I was like, you guys are saying it weird.
But yeah, the ground beef seasoning and cooking veggies all became part of European cooking, where sometimes you would have bread present as a side. It's all coming together.
Now I really want a medieval cooking game, because I feel like this is just like a fun...
So as these meaty treats are becoming more and more commonplace, there's more divergent ways of cooking meats. You end up with one front runner for just premier beef, Hamburg, Germany.
I guess, yeah, Germany does have, like, a pretty big cow supply even today.
In fact, it was so good that their food started moving to America with the constant German immigration. They were like, we want a taste of food, so they'd bring, and the best meat you could get from the best meat supplier was steak in the style of Hamburg. But the love for this prestigious meat is often, yes, credited to German immigrants. Then we come to the sort of kerfuffle, the wrinkle in time, if you will. Who created the first burger? There's multiple people who claim that it's them. I have an opinion.
Okay.
And it actually kind of ties back to something I forgot to talk about in our airship episode, so I'm glad I get a chance to revisit this. So, Charlie Negreen in 1885 was a teenager from Wisconsin. He's 15 years old, selling meatballs at a fair, so he claims. Nobody wanted to eat these meatballs. You're trying to go win your girl a stuffed teddy bear. You can't have a meatball in your hand.
Yeah.
But in a stroke of alleged genius, he takes 2 pieces of bread, smushes the meatball, because, there's funnel cakes, there's all these other things being sold. Maybe at this time, the steak in the style of Hamburg has made its way to America, but honestly, a lot of the time, they're actually worse cuts of meat. However, something that plays into the rise of the burger is the fact that the machine that allows you to mince meat is invented.
Oh. It's kind of like the Bible growing with the printing press.
But as soon as this guy started smashing his meatballs in between 2 pieces of sliced bread, people were able to eat it while walking, and it became known as, the burger, because it's Hamburg style.
Yeah.
But this dude, he would later be known as Cheeseburger Charlie because of his claim to creating a burger.
Okay.
And yet...
So was he putting cheese in it? Or?
No, he was not. That's part of the story that comes later.
Then he's Hamburger Charlie.
I know, but it's alliteration. It's C&C. There's the Minches brothers, also 1885 for their claim, at a fair in Hamburg, New York.
Oh.
They ran out of pork for their sandwiches and started using their extra beef instead, and it sold so well they were like, we invented a hamburger. So this one was a burger in the style of Hamburg, New York. But also clearly tracing its heritage back to the cuts of meat brought over in Hamburg,
That
Germany.
seems a little too coincidental for me.
Then there's Louis Lassen in 1900. He's credited by the Library of Congress in the United States of America for serving steak scraps on toast as the first burger.
That sounds delicious.
It sounds more like a melt to me, but that's fine. You'll understand why they aren't using buns in a little bit. Fletcher Davis in 1904 showed up at the St. Louis World's Fair selling a similar bread and beef burger, claiming it was a family recipe predating all of his competition. But I think there's someone else who, whether you think he did it first, absolutely changed the game and made the burger that we know today. Oscar Weber Bilby.
That's... I can hear the top hat now.
Is credited with the true burger. And in my opinion, is the burger daddy. He served seasoned beef, which he had raised on his homestead, and he served this beef, which he had seasoned himself, cooked himself, on homemade yeast buns rather than bread or toast in 1841 on the 4th of July in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That's a lot of America. I mean, Tulsa's like dead center of the map of...
Exactly. Tulsa, at the time, was a cultural hub as a layover airport location between the American coasts, and even later on got a visit from the USS Los Angeles in the 1920s.
That's the airship.
Yes, it is.
In case you didn't know, the airship...
Well, we did a whole episode.
Yeah, that's the one that Germany built, right?
Mm-hmm. Good job remembering. And this also ties into something that would happen later on, which you can learn all about. George Motz is like the hamburger guru of our day. The Oklahoma Smash Burger, which was invented by taking the ground meat, onions that you would put on your griddle, and you push the meat down into the onions. It caramelizes and locks the flavor into the patty. and then you serve it on either lightly toasted buns, maybe just buttered buns. There's a couple different techniques. And it was invented because it would cook faster by smashing it and extend the meat supply. And it was done during the Industrial Revolution when they had to feed entire working crews.
Oh.
Very quickly. And in fact, early burgers were square-shaped so that they could fit on a griddle more efficiently.
Huh.
It was only with fast food becoming more of a relaxed pastime that they adopted the classical round look, and it obviously fit better into the buns, which weren't standardized until a little bit, because the bun concept had changed the game, allowing more meat and more toppings per burger, because it was stronger than the bread.
Oh, right. Yeah.
However, Lionel Sternberg, a 16-year-old in Pasadena, California, was credited for adding cheese to the burger in 1924. Reports vary whether or not a client asked him to or whether he was experimenting himself. But it obviously took off.
I love the amount of controversy that we're skating around with
the
this.
burger controversy is amazing.
I really hope our podcast becomes controversial and, people write articles like, these guys are saying this.
Hey, I've seen what they make on Food Network. We are not below what they are willing to publish. Louis Ballast was the one who coined the term cheeseburger in 1935, but couldn't trademark the concept because the process was already far too popular.
Ain't that just how it is?
White Castle popularized and standardized the bun concept in the 1920s, which coincided with the revolutionary concept of sliced bread.
White Castle predates sliced bread.
It's roughly approximately. Technically, it started being made in 1916, but he didn't establish White Castle till the 1920s.
I like noted, this is around the time Betty White is born.
Yes, I know. I knew you were going to bring up Betty White. Anyway, the sliced bread concept was created by Otto Friedrich, oh my god, my handwriting is terrible, Rothwetter. Anyway, so this whole thing really standardizes the concept of the burger. So now you've got your bun, your meat, your seasoning. It's all standardized, which is perfect for the rise of diners, drive-ins, and drive-thrus.
And Guy Fieri.
So in the 1940s, the McDonald's creates the Speedy system, spelled S-P-E-E-D-E-E, Speedy system.
That's upsetting.
It's old-timey, it's quaint. If you've watched The Founder, you have some concept of this, and if you haven't watched The Founder, go watch The Founder.
It's a delightful movie.
It's delightful in the same way that, like, The Big Short or The Social Network is.
Yeah, it's not a feel-good movie.
But it is interesting. And, of course, I'd be remiss since we're doing White Castle and McDonald's, if I didn't bring up the burger we just ate. Harmon Dobson created a wider bun, 24/7 service, and the concept of custom burgers in Corpus Christi, Texas, saying that he wanted people to have a burger experience that when they bit into it was so good they'd say, wow, what a burger. As America industrialized, people were now living in cities that were more and more populated instead of spread out in the boondocks. They were living closer than ever, roads were more standardized, and more people than ever owned cars.
Okay.
With this rise, there was also the industrialization of America, with blue-collar workers desiring quick, affordable lunches on their very short lunch breaks while they're building the type of buildings that we look at now, and we think, wow, look at that old building, and for them they're making it. Like, those old photos, like men standing on beams way up, like, those guys had to eat. Yeah. And so you set up a food truck or something right there, and you cook food real quick for them. You got to grill it and go, because that's a quick window, quick turnaround for their lunch.
Yeah, because they have to climb down the building.
Mm-hmm. And it has to be affordable and actually give them enough sustenance for them to be able to climb back up and
normally when
be
you see
terrifying.
When you see those photos of them sitting on girders and stuff, they're normally having soup out of thermoses, or they have a tiny metal lunchbox with them,
which is adorable.
Yeah, but like, it's like not warm.
If you had to make that trip every day, you didn't want to have to go up and down multiple times if you could avoid it. But the food truck and the food cart then evolved into the early diner, which the first ones were often repurposed rail cars, leading to the classic elongated shape.
Oh, okay, I'm seeing it.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
A food cart inside a shipping container is a diner. Like that effectively.
It's the evolution. But like you just take a train cart, and that's why they have the long shape. You put it up on cinder blocks and you cook.
Oh my goodness, that.
Yeah. Pretty crazy, right? Like, as soon as you hear it, it makes total sense.
I feel like we should do an episode on like architecture for buildings and stuff like that, and just like how buildings kind of got their weird.
It might kind of suck for the audio only people.
Yeah,
but yeah, the architecture is very cool. So after all of this, it became a tasty way to feed the whole family and gather around with friends. So you could go and you'd meet up, after work, and like the wives get to hang out, the husbands get to hang out, the kids get to go play around outside, and eat some lead chips.
Yeah, the cool kid who hangs out with you kicks the jukebox, and it plays his favorite song.
But yeah, and another thing was that after World War II, there was a huge boom in like children being born, because they're like, I may never come back, honey. We have one night together. Let's spend it. And now they have to feed those kids.
Oh, I thought they were eating burgers with that sound.
Oh, yeah, that's what they were doing.
We have one night together. Let's have a delicious hamburger with cheese.
So you have this huge boom in family size. You have the industrialization of America. You have the rise of the foods that have come over, gestating into commonplace things. You've got burger shops that are local places becoming chain food restaurants. And suddenly, the fast food drive-through becomes a really common occurrence as the road trip becomes popularized as America's new highway system is completed.
Right.
And, but yeah, the road trip reinvigorated the concept of the fast food experience. And, like, no matter where you traveled, you knew what you were getting.
Yeah.
It's standardized.
I assume the Waffle House somehow rode the coattails of that.
That's like the dark evil that they thought they had defeated that was, but they'd all then been deceived.
Yeah.
In the 1950s and 1960s, car and hot rod culture boomed, giving drive-ins and diners a whole new generation of the counterculture rebellious teens who were now hanging out in those places too. So you've got your like pre-war, your post-war, and then you've got like the kids of those people as well who were big into the hot rod scene like their parents were, and who were like the rebel without a cause. And it's where you get your sort of jukebox and Fonzie situation.
Now we're in the happy days.
Yeah. So you can see this whole concept is growing with America at the time. And as a society which has continued to accelerate in the rate that we live our lives and that we get information, that we want everything, even now to the 21st century, travel becomes more and more common. The quick and affordable standardized meal of fast food burgers became a worldwide staple that it's not just American, it's everywhere. KFC is in Japan. They have different cultural elements, but they all kind of grew because it became, something that people just understood and liked. And it's that beautiful meshing of cultures because, again, we trace this back to cultures that long predate the foundation of the American colonies.
Empires that have fallen.
And it's still a staple of the eating experience to this very day. So I have to ask you, does the cheeseburger story and the existence of the drive-in experience, does that belong in a museum?
I think absolutely. It's interesting to see that, like, the desire for humanity to have a portable food has just been so prevalent throughout history.
Yeah, and so good that I can enjoy a tasty Whataburger right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because now we're entering a phase that is, we're just raising our standards of what the requirements should be for those portable meals.
And
ingredient wise.
During around the pandemic, there was a huge controversy in the UK because it turns out there was a buttload of horse meat being put into burgers that no one knew about. And so it actually led to the downfall of a lot of fast food joints in there and the uptick in bougie artisan burgers because you could trust their meat to not be made of horse.
Oh.
And so there's still ongoing burger evolutions to this day. You've got, I think of the classic burger of maybe not the best burger in the world of bowling alleys or football games when you're in high school or college. But at the same time, I love me a good smash burger or a good Five Guys where I'm willing to pay a little bit more because I want that experience. And to me, that's classic Americana.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that so much of foods come from World's Fairs and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a really common theme.
Because I know the waffle cone came from like a guy selling ice cream in cups, and they ran out of cups, so he goes to the waffle stand next door, gets a whole bunch of those, and uses that, and it went off crazy. So like, yeah, it's interesting. Honestly, we could probably do a couple episodes on World's Fairs.
Oh yeah, well, you think about it. It's back in the day. That's when you meet other cultures, even people in nearby towns. It may be the first and only time you ever interact with them is at a world fair or at a fairground.
Yeah, especially in 1800s when like highways aren't a thing, and maybe you don't. I mean, cars are certainly not.
They're not standardized.
Yeah, and roads are sketchy. Who knows? Like,
I mean, in my opinion, there's a lot of sketchy roads now.
Yeah, but like even more so in the fact that it's like, oh, this road is made of mud. It goes for a couple miles.
Yes, I was just saying that we are the Roman Empire falling now, but
yeah, but
at least our burgers will outlive us, just like it did the Romans.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that the thing that seems to outlast a lot of cultures is like fast food and candies and stuff.
A nation can fall, but the culture can live on, and I think food is sort of like, I mean, I don't know if we brought it up during the Crusade episode about the Leper Knights, but when Catholics first discovered coffee, which was a Muslim drink, they brought it to the Pope, like, too many of our Crusaders like this coffee thing, and the Pope was like, that's good. Jesus says you can drink this. That's good. Give me more coffee. Like, food defies bias. It defies like geographic location of where you're from. It's just a thing that we all have a taste for and a preference for, and it's comforting. It's nostalgic.
Yeah.
So it outlives every culture.
And I think about like Italy, like a lot of the lower classes made most of the dishes that we know today as Italian foods. And it was usually out of necessity of like, we only have so many ingredients, we can only afford so much. Let's stretch this and make as many great things.
What was the thing where they would get mad at the Pope for it? Was it eggs?
Yes, the Pope was like basically confiscating eggs. There was like an egg tax or something like that.
Boy, that's...
And so in the ingredients for making a specific pasta dish that you used an egg substitute, I can't remember what it was. I think it was like a milk or something like that. But you were supposed to have like an Italian curse into the wind that hope the Pope chokes on his eggs. Like that. Which is such a funny thing to have in the recipe.
As someone who has a lot of Italian in the family, I can tell you the spirit has not changed.
Yeah, we need more recipes. We should make a cookbook that is just like it mixed into the recipe is like, all right, now you gotta like curse like this person or that person. Like,
it's the real anarchist cookbook, but it's just a cookbook that's passive aggressive.
Oh yeah, the in-laws cookbook. As we keep doing more podcast episodes, we're going to have to test that theory.
First of all, I don't see this as a podcast. It's a history and science series that you can listen to audio only, but I put up visual stuff.
But it's a pocket cast.
Also, no one's listening to this on an iPod.
Is that what the pod stands for?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So nothing is a podcast anymore, really. But I always think of this series as something that if your professor or your teacher's hungover, they can put this on and you'll learn something, and they can sit in the corner with their sunglasses on, and you know what? They don't get paid enough to fight through a hangover anyway, so give them time to wear it off. When you're their age, you'll understand.
Yeah. More power to the teachers.
So anyway, drink booze, eat burgers, time travelers. See what happens if you take Hitler out of the equation. Let's find out. Topple those dominoes.
Yeah, see what happens.
Thanks for watching.